So, when you hear the word diagnosis, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's pretty black and white, right? You either have something or you don't. But what if it's not that simple, especially when it comes to personality? What if we don't really fit into these neat little boxes? Well, today we're going to dive into a debate that's totally shaking up the world of psychology. It's all about whether we should ditch the simple labels and start thinking in terms of complex spectrums.
And this question, man, this gets right to the heart of it. Is a personality disorder something you have, like you catch it the way you catch a cold? Or is it something you are? Is it just an extreme version of the same personality traits that literally everybody has? How we answer that question, well, it changes absolutely everything. It really frames this whole debate we're about to get into.
Okay, so this really boils down to two totally different ways of looking at the world. On one hand, you've got the categorical idea. Think of it like a light switch. It's either on or it's off. You either have a diagnosis or you don't. End of story. Pretty simple, right? But then there's the dimensional approach. And this is more like a dimmer switch. The idea here is that we all have the same basic personality traits, it's just a matter of degree. A so-called disorder is just what happens when that dimmer switch gets cranked way up to an extreme that causes real problems.
So, to really wrap our heads around this, we kind of need to see where that traditional light switch model even came from. Let's dig into the system that has really run the show in psychology for decades.
All right, so this is the classic medical way of doing things. It's the model used by what's basically the Bible of psychiatry, the DSM. And it treats mental health issues just like any other physical disease, as these separate, distinct conditions. In this world, a personality disorder isn't just a bit more of something, it's seen as a totally different state of being. There's a hard line in the sand between what's considered normal and what's considered disorder.
And yeah, this image really nails it. The whole system is designed to put people into these neat, tidy, separate boxes. If you check off enough symptoms on a list to hit a certain number, boom, you're put in the diagnosis box. It feels clean, it's organized, and on the surface, it seems super straightforward.
And look, to be fair, there are some really practical reasons this model has been the standard for so long. It makes things simpler, right? A clear-cut diagnosis helps doctors figure out if they should treat someone, it gives them a clear target for that treatment, and it just makes it easier to talk about. A single label, say borderline personality disorder, can communicate a ton of information really fast. But, and this is a big but, that simplicity, it comes with a pretty hefty price.
Because as researchers started to dig in, they realized these neat little boxes weren't just simple, they were way too simple. And when you put them under a scientific microscope, they really start to fall apart.
Okay, I want you to look at this number, 126. What on earth could that possibly be?
That is the number of different symptom combinations that can get you a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. Let that sink in. 126 different ways to get the exact same label. This wild amount of variety inside one category, researchers call it heterogeneity. And honestly, it's one of the biggest cracks you can find in the whole box model.
And this quote from the research just hammers the point home. You can have two people who get the exact same diagnosis, but they might only share one or two symptoms. Just think about that for a second. We put them in the same box, but their lived experiences could be almost completely different. So you have to ask, how helpful is that box in the first place?
And it doesn't stop there. The problems just keep stacking up. For one, there's this huge overlap. The fancy term is comorbidity, where people end up fitting into multiple boxes at the same time. On top of that, the diagnoses aren't even stable. They can change over time. But honestly, the biggest knock against the whole system might be this. The single most common diagnosis that gets handed out is personality disorder not otherwise specified. That's basically the system raising its hands and saying, yeah, we don't know. This person doesn't actually fit into any of our boxes.
So, if the boxes are broken, what's the alternative? Well, maybe it's time to stop trying to cram people into categories and start thinking about personality as a spectrum. Let's meet the challenger, the dimensional model.
This right here is the big idea. The dimensional view says there isn't some clear, bright line between normal and disordered. Nope. Instead, it says we all have the same fundamental personality traits. A disorder is just what we call it when those traits get so extreme, so rigid, that they cause real pain and problems in someone's life. The whole focus shifts from what do you have to where do you fall on these different scales. And this is such a great way to visualize it. Forget the separate boxes. Instead, picture a set of sliders, or these beautiful, overlapping gradients of color. In this model, every single person has their own unique profile, their own settings on these spectrums.
It's an approach that can actually capture the nuance, the fluidity of a real human personality in a way that a rigid box just can't.
Now you might be thinking, okay, but doesn't this just lead to chaos, a million different spectrums? But here's the amazing part. Scientists, working all over the world, completely independent of each other, keep landing on the same basic structure for personality. You can call it neuroticism, or you can call it emotional dysregulation, you can call it conscientiousness or constraint. Whatever the name, the research keeps pointing back to the same 4 or 5 fundamental domains. That's a huge deal. It's this powerful scientific consensus that tells us we've likely found the actual building blocks of personality.
Okay, so the scientific case for thinking in spectrums is really strong. But what does that actually mean in the real world? Like, what does this look like in a therapist's office? How do you actually turn a bunch of spectrums into a tool that helps people?
And this is absolutely key. This isn't just some abstract debate for academics in an ivory tower. No, researchers have been hard at work creating practical, hybrid models that try to give us the best of both worlds. You get the straightforward clarity of a yes or no decision, combined with the rich, detailed picture you get from a dimensional profile.
So here's how one of the leading ideas for a hybrid model works. It's basically a 2-step process. Step 1 is still a yes or no question, but it's a much bigger, more fundamental one. It asks, is this person's personality causing them significant real-world problems in their life, with themselves, with their relationships? If the answer is yes, then you go to step 2. And step 2 is where the real change is. Instead of slapping on a simple label, you create a detailed profile. It's like a unique personality map, showing where that person falls on all the core spectrum.
What this does is it completely shifts the fundamental question a clinician is asking. We're moving away from which box does this person fit into, and we're moving towards what is this person's unique personality profile. The goal isn't to label anymore. It's to understand and describe an individual's psychological makeup. What are their strengths? What are their vulnerabilities? What is the specific combination of traits that makes them, them? And this, of course, leaves us with the biggest, most challenging question of all. If personality really is a spectrum, with no natural built-in line between healthy and disordered, then who gets to draw that line? Where do we draw it? Deciding what counts as impaired enough to need help, that's not just a scientific question anymore. It becomes a massive judgment call for doctors and really for all of us as a society. It's a really complex problem, and honestly, how we decide to answer it is going to shape the entire future of mental health.